Welcome to another exciting episode of StraussNet Sports Radio. It's been a while. I know there's a lot of good and bad reasons for that. Some of that's just I've been busy. Others, my computer's been fighting me pretty much the entire summer. And, it happens. But here we are. We are back. It has been several months. I believe March was the last episode. That was the baseball season preview. We talked a little hockey as we were getting ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Boy, there's so many episodes we missed doing, and hopefully you've stuck around. Hopefully we can cover kind of what we missed. It's going to be a modge-podge here today. I think mainly I want to talk about what has happened with the baseball season and kind of what I think might happen going forward. Having said that, I've been really bad at predictions over the last year. Let's walk it back to 2 episodes ago, which was the Super Bowl. I correctly predicted over my buddy Tim Bradshaw that the Chiefs would win. I told you all last year that I was kind of having a football crisis because I'm a Patriots fan, and then I started following Tampa with Tom Brady. And what would happen after Tom Brady left? I just said that I was announcing my Chiefs Kingdom fandom. I kind of went back to 2020 when I started following them but didn't declare myself a fan, then started following Tampa. I tried following the Colts last year, kind of just for fun, and that blew up in my face. So I've simplified it. Patriots, Chiefs, you can call me a fair weather all you want or whatever. I'm just having fun. I'm enjoying Patrick Mahomes. Brady has retired. And then we get into the previous episode where I predicted poorly with my 2 co-hosts the baseball season. We talked about how I thought the Yankees and the Mets were going to play in the World Series, or the Yankees and the Phillies, and it turns out the Mets and the Yankees didn't do anything this year. They all got hurt. I'm looking at my prediction sheet from that episode now, and it's a disaster. Right now we're looking at, I had Texas and Toronto and Seattle as a wild card in the AL. It looks like Texas could win that division. Actually, all 3 teams are right up there for the AL West. The Cardinals, I thought they were going to win the division despite their pitching woes. They are a complete disaster. Let's start there. Let's start with the Cardinals. So, the St. Louis Cardinals, I thought, coming off of the year Albert Pujols returned, they won the division. This was it. They were going to get back into the fold. Well, they're in last place in the division at 56-72 today on August 24th. That's really only better than one team in the National League. It is. It's not even really. It is. It's better than Colorado. It's better than Oakland. It's better than Kansas City and the White Sox. That's it. They've traded a whole bunch of pieces. Montgomery, Flaherty, Paul DeYoung, who's since been released and picked back up. We have seen Jordan Walker. We have seen Mason Wynn. Adam Wainwright is struggling, and it hurts me to see. He got hurt in the World Baseball Classic. That was the other thing. The World Baseball Classic was going on in spring training. We'd seen a few games. USA lost to Japan in the final. It was a great game. Adam Wainwright got hurt not during the games, but working out the day of the final. Like, it wasn't even a day he was going to pitch. Groin strain, ended up missing some time, tried to rush back. He was okay for a bit, but really just kind of fell apart at that point. From there, it's just been a disaster. He needs, right now, 2 more wins to get to 200 for his career, and I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I'm sorry to say. He's getting worse, and I'm not saying I blame him for coming back. There's no reason he shouldn't be pitching right now. Cardinals are out of it, so you might as well let him pitch. He's a Cardinal legend. You hate to see it this way. He looked fine last year. I mean, he looked good in 2022, and at the end of the year, he said he was going through some mechanical issues that led to him not pitching as well down the stretch and not pitching in the postseason. He wanted to give it one more year. I don't think it was the 200 wins. I think it was just he didn't like how it finished at the end of last year, and he wanted to go out in the same glory that Yachty and Albert Pujols did, and unfortunately he probably should have just walked off with the 2 of them. But, I never blame an athlete. That's their career. That's what they love to do. If he didn't like doing it, he's not doing it for the money. I know he's getting paid, but if he didn't like doing it, he'd just stop. I hope he finds a way to win his last 2 games. It doesn't look good right now, and the Cardinals aren't getting any better. It's like one game he'll be okay, but they won't score. Another game he'll give up 9, 10 runs. It's bad. At this point, the Cardinals, it's just watching what do you got. And what do they have? They have a lineup. No matter who they've put in the lineup, it feels like the offense has been fine. Yeah, you've hit some lulls, but you're gonna in the season. I think if you had good pitching, the stat is that the Cardinals, if they had as many blown saves as any of the other teams in the division, they'd actually lead the division. Their bullpen's been horrendous. Ryan Helsing's been out. Hicks was good for a while, but they traded him. Gallegos just hasn't been as reliable. Jojo Romero is currently closing. I mean, the bullpen's been a mess. The starting rotation wasn't good enough. It took Michaelis a while. The front office came out and said that their analytics department was scripting games to contact like usual and didn't factor in the ban of the shifting that happened this year. We've had the ban of shifting. We've had the pitch clock, which it's not as big a deal as a lot of people thought it was going to be, but I also don't like it still. I don't like really the new rules. Just leave baseball alone. But the Cardinals said they really didn't adjust their game planning and strategies for the new rules, and it burned them because they've always been a very, pitch to contact type team, and it didn't work. So they need to go out and get some starting pitching. They've said we need to go out and get starting pitching. Now, my top of my list, that's going to be Aaron Nola, who's with the Phillies, and the Phillies might re-sign him. It's going to be hard for them because they have a lot of pieces that are under contract for a lot of money. But if you're telling me, hey, Aaron, you're in charge of the Cardinals offseason, go get one guy, Aaron Nola. Yeah, his ERA can get up to 4+ at times, but he goes deep in games. He strikes a lot of guys out. He's exactly the piece the Cardinals need, I think. I also like Blake Snell and Sonny Gray. I'd actually like to see the Cardinals get somebody like Nola or Snell and a Sonny Gray. I feel like Sonny Gray is a low number 1 or a high number 2. He's not the same echelon. Like, think of your fantasy baseball team. You draft Nola or Snell before Sonny Gray. I feel like Sonny Gray would be a good number 2 fit. And then like a Jordan Montgomery, who they just traded away to the Texas Rangers, I'd like to see him back. So if you add those three to Michaelis, who's straightened the ship out, and Matz, who was doing pretty well recently until he got hurt, I think you have a decent rotation looking into next season. What other drama have we had? We had Wilson Contreras, the new Cardinals catcher, replacing Yadier Molina, stayed behind and did not go to the World Baseball Classic, and he was rewarded with being benched in late April, early May. The Cardinals said that the pitchers were complaining of him being inconsistent behind the plate, and the whole season for the Cardinals has been twofold. One, the team hasn't been very good, and two, the public relations around it. I'm sorry about that. The public relations around the team has been a disaster. Wilson Contreras, then the report comes out he's going to be the DH indefinitely until further notice, no timetable. He will not be the catcher. Andrew Kisner, and I don't even remember who it was. It wasn't even Herrera, their other prospect. It was someone else. It was another guy, Barrera. I don't even remember. This is how crazy the season's been. So much has happened. It's been like a new episode of Seinfeld every week in Cardinal Land. Ali Marmol's been bad at handling the press. I don't think he's a great manager, but I think his handling of the press has been atrocious, making the spotlight even squarer on him. For all of Mike Matheny's flaws handling a bullpen, he would come out and take blame for stuff. I don't think Ali Marmol's really taken credit or blame, but he's also, the button pusher for the analytics department, so I digress. Mike Schultz should have still been the manager. Anyway, so they say Wilson Contreras isn't going to be the catcher. And the fans all kind of rally behind him because it's unfair. And he becomes, like this hero, this lightning rod for the team. And it almost seems like the team took off when they did that because I don't think the players really liked it either, the way it was handled. And we'll get to the what really happened in a moment. But just from the outside point of view, it was like, wow, everyone's kind of bonding over this. This is where we're going to take off. And they did for a hot minute. And then the team said, oh, he's doing better. We'll see if he'll work on catching and he'll be back soon. Next day, he's catching. So it lasted like a week and a half to 2 weeks. When the Yankees came in, Michael Kay, the Yankees TV announcer, said that Contreras was calling pitches that the pitchers didn't throw. Now, the people who were kind of mentioned were Flaherty, Wainwright, Montgomery. Montgomery actually was pitching well. So I believe that what happened was Contreras wasn't as familiar with these guys as he should have been. He's not seen as a great defensive or handler of pitchers type of catcher, but you definitely saw the work ethic was there. I earned a lot of respect for him watching this year, going through all this, and his confidence was shaken. He wasn't good at the plate either as a hitter. And then they took him out for 2 weeks, and so if the Cardinals had just said, we're going to take him out of catching because there's some things he needs to work on, and then let him work on it, and then a couple weeks later put him back catching, no one would have been the wiser. But instead they're like, he's not going to be our catcher anymore, a month into his giant contract, the biggest contract a free agent has ever signed in St. Louis. Jack Flaherty even came out and said, no, I want to work with this guy. I want to help him get better and figure out what's going wrong. Flaherty is a guy who was said to have complained about him. So, it's kind of like, think about the workplace. You go to your manager and you complain, hey, so-and-so's not really doing their job right. It gets out to the press, oh, hey, so-and-so's complaining about so-and-so. I'm guessing the Cardinal pitchers went to the management and the staff and said, hey, Contreras doesn't know what we throw. We need to fix that. And management pushed the panic button, and all heck broke loose. So if they just handled it like Contreras is working on some things, we're going to put him back in there, no one would have cared. Nothing, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But, and then you had Marmol criticizing Tyler O'Neill's hustle, and then Tyler O'Neill not playing for half the season again, kind of over him, saying that, Dylan Carlson's an extra piece now, so we're all worried about, are we going to trade him or not? Nolan Arenado was worried he was going to get traded. He was the only All-Star this year, deservingly so. And so it's just been one thing after another in Cardinal land. They're done. I'm still watching my team. I had expectations for the longest time, and finally it's become, I'm happy to have my team. I was sad a couple weeks ago. I don't want it to go away. I don't like not having my team to look forward to. So I'm just going to enjoy them the last month and a few days at this point, and then see what happens in the postseason. I did take a big, long road trip with the team. Not big, long, like duration, but distance. Went down with my wife and her friend to see her sister to Dallas, Texas area. So I saw 2 games in Arlington. Beautiful ballpark. I don't know if you've heard me, my friends have heard me talk about not adopting teams permanently, but, for a season or so, just something fun. I really enjoyed Texas, and I'm kind of pulling for them. It's going to be hard to pull for them over Baltimore, who was like a childhood favorite. I'll be pulling for both of them to meet in the ALCS, essentially. Here's how big a baseball fan I am. I had a Texas Rangers City Connect jersey custom made with Nathan Eovaldi, former Red Sox, when I went down there. That was my birthday present to myself. I really enjoyed it, and I really like what the Rangers are building there. They've always been a team that I just haven't cared about, and now, I really enjoyed it. I liked it. That ballpark, especially for having a roof, was really nice, and I'm going to try to get back there next year for the All-Star Game or the Home Run Derby. So go Texas. No worries at the ballpark tonight. It's baseball time in Texas, as I say before the games. Good luck heading into the postseason, hopefully. Standings are close. As for my Red Sox, they've been up and down all year. They've kind of hovered 500. They can make the playoffs. They're only a couple games out. They put the hurt on Houston today. But they've just been missing the starting rotation. They really have. And they didn't go get anyone at the deadline. Chaim Bloom said they're building something. They didn't want to take away from that. If they did, go out and get somebody at the deadline, it would have taken away from what they're building in terms of young players. Which I understand, but you still would have liked to see them do something. But with them, they got Justin Turner, Cassis, Kenley Jansen, some new pieces to go along with the old, Adam Duvall. But then a guy like Jarren Duran finally turns the corner to go along with Devers and company. And it's a nice team they're kind of building. It reminds me a little bit of 21. So we'll see what they do next year, see if they add anything. They need a little bit more pitching, honestly. I think they need a true number one. Sale can't do it anymore. They don't have Eduardo Rodriguez. They don't have Nathan Eovaldi. They need a little bit more in the pitching department. They have just enough to get by right now. It's kind of like the Cardinals, but they just haven't had enough. So it'll be interesting to watch the Red Sox moving forward. So where are we in terms of, the playoffs? Who do we think is going to be really good in the playoffs? Well, there's an obvious, and that would be the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves are just running away with baseball. They have 82 wins. No one's even close. Well, I take it back. Baltimore's got 78. They're the best team in the American League, unbelievably. Texas at 72. Houston's at 72. Seattle's at 71. Texas was running away with that division, but now it's really close. It's only a game difference for like all three of those teams. Minnesota's kind of taken over the Central. White Sox fired everyone and traded everyone pretty much. They're goners. Yankees are in last place in the AL East. Listen to this. So this is from last to first. Yankees, Red Sox, Toronto, Tampa, Baltimore. That's like what the standings were in like 2021. It's reverse of what it should have been. I guess Tampa was ahead of the Red Sox and Yankees, but point being, everyone thought it'd be kind of the reverse, but it's not. As for the National League, Dodgers lead the West. The Diamondbacks led for a long time, but the Dodgers have come back and they haven't wrapped it up, but they're 12 and a half games up. Phillies are in it in terms of the wild card. The NL Central's a mess. Brewers, Cubs, and Cincinnati are all they all have a chance to win that division. Pittsburgh and St. Louis are pretty much out of it. In terms of the wild card, teams that really look like they're in it, Philly, Cubs, Cincy, Arizona, San Francisco, and Miami. Padres fell flat on their face. Mets are on their face. Everybody else, Cardinals fell on their face. I actually told my wife, I want the Cubs to make the playoffs so I can still go to the postseason this year. I don't want to see them win in the postseason, but I kind of want to see them make it. I've never been to a postseason game at Wrigley Field, so this would be my chance. I'm guessing those ticket prices aren't going to be the $20 I paid for the Cardinals wild card round last year. American League, like I said, Tampa, Seattle, and Houston currently. Toronto and Red Sox. Yankees are done. They're 10 games out. Red Sox are 3.5 out, so they gotta keep up. But should be a fun run to the postseason. If I had to pick, the Braves have the kind of pressure on them right now where they better at least make the NLCS, and they should go to the World Series with how good they are. In the American League, it's not as cut and dry because you have Baltimore, but they're not experienced. So if they were to get there and get eliminated, I don't think anyone would really blink. It'd be kind of disappointing, but they're not really, they're not a juggernaut. They're not a powerhouse. It's just they're making it. Will they, won't they in the postseason? I think Texas has a little more. They better figure it out because they went out and got Scherzer. The Astros went out and got Verlander, both from the Mets, so the Mets blew it up real quick. Scherzer was traded because I guess Scherzer and Verlander both asked the owner, where are we going? Are we going to compete next year? And he said no. And so they're like, trade me. So each of the Texas teams got one of those guys. Verlander goes back to Houston, and Scherzer is new on the Texas Rangers. So Texas baseball between those two teams is going to be very interesting come postseason time. Chance that they face each other early at some point. We'll see. Another development in baseball that I didn't know about is the Immaculate Grid. Go to ImmaculateGrid.com. It's play on the Immaculate Inning. It's a 3x3, so 9 squares. You get 9 guesses, kind of like your Wordle type thing. And they'll put down teams that two guys. The guy would play for both teams. So Padres and Astros. Who is it who played there? And then maybe you have in one of the columns Astros and then 30 stolen base season or something. And maybe by the end, you'll have 2 stat categories, 30 stolen bases and 1 an MVP, or maybe it's just all teams, or we've seen all stats. But it's fun. Go try it out. You get 9 guesses. People post them on Twitter. There's no right way to play it, but there is a scoring system, and there is a way that people tend to try to do it. So the more popular an answer, so if I said Seattle Mariners and Cincinnati Reds, a very high percentage of people are going to say Ken Griffey Jr., but what a lot of people try to do is they try to get a low percentage. So I use John Axford a lot, actually, because he's played for a lot of teams, and not a lot of people think of him. And so you try to get, and if you have a lot of high percentage scores, you're going to get a very high final score. But a lot of people like me and my dad try to think of these players that are obscure, that no one thinks of, and try to get a very low score. I think I had a 36 or something today. I don't remember. But Go try it out. They've got it for all the sports now, it feels like. They're doing more and more. Baseball Reference and all the other sports reference sites bought it recently, so it's getting better. But I do the baseball one. I've had bad luck with the hockey one, and that's actually a good transition. Let's talk some hockey. I bet money on two different teams this hockey postseason. I bet on the New York Rangers, first of all, to win the Stanley Cup, and then I bet on the Carolina Hurricanes after the Rangers fell on their face. The Rangers did exactly what I thought they were going to do. Even though I thought they could win, they built a super team, and super teams are really hard to win with because pardon me, everyone needs the puck. No, I did not just choke. I kind of choked on my own air. They had their team, but they added Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane's a type of player who he needs the puck. He needs to be the guy, the trigger guy. But the Rangers had their studs, and so it kind of changed the dynamic of how that team worked. It became very Patrick Kane oriented. I'm not blaming him for the fall. There were a lot of things, but that was definitely one thing that I noticed early. Tarasenko kind of fit in a little easier, but Kane didn't really fit being it changed to him being the guy rather than all the guys who'd already been the guy or the guys on the Texas Rangers, New York Rangers, hockey. So they got bounced in 7. Carolina looked really good, and they went to the conference finals, and they fell to Florida. Aaron, you're forgetting something. No, I'm not. The Boston Bruins were the best team ever in the regular season and lost in 7 games to the Florida Panthers, who ended up going to the Stanley Cup final. They were the runners-up for the whole thing. So you had a wild card team. On the other side of the bracket, my St. Louis Blues did not make it. They sold off. We'll get to them in a moment. The Vegas Golden Knights, who were the number 1 team in the Pacific division winner. I believe they were the number 1 team in the whole bracket. It never ended up mattering because they played Dallas in Colorado, who's last year's champion, or 2 years ago at this point. Colorado lost in the first round, so Dallas played Vegas. Dallas was the number 2 in the Central. The number 1 in the Pacific played the wild card, and Vegas won 4-1 over the Florida Panthers. So Vegas is your Stanley Cup champion. They've been to 2 since they came into the league in 2017. The 16-17 season, or no, it was the 17-18. I'm sorry, the 17-18 season. I was right, 2017. They went that year and lost to the Capitals. Now they have won their very first Stanley Cup. What do the St. Louis Blues look like this year? Well, the St. Louis Blues they're going to take a step back to try to take a step forward. I'm kind of excited. It's something different. The St. Louis Blues Tarasenko's gone. Ryan O'Reilly's gone. They still have Binnington. They're going to have a top line, or at least their top players are Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou. They don't have a captain right now. We'll see if they name one. A lot of people speculating that Thomas could be the captain. But last year, Thomas kind of took a step back. Not necessarily statistically, but it didn't feel like he was as not much of a leader last year. But a lot of things went wrong last year. Berube called him out at one point for not kind of playing a 200-foot game. The boys needed some work. The GM at the end of the year, Doug Armstrong, even said, we need to bring some younger guys in to help with the coaching staff because, the veterans, the older guys, a lot of the guys who were on the Stanley Cup team even were even young veterans. This Blues team has a lot of younger players. How do you motivate these guys? People of this era don't respond to the browbeating they did in the past. That's not to say that Craig Berube was hard on these guys, but sometimes you have to motivate different people in different ways. So the Blues brought in a couple of different players. Vrana was a nice pickup from Detroit late in the year. He had some sort of substance use issue that he took care. He was put on a restricted list early last year. Seemed to get over it. Came back. Detroit never really brought him back, but they sent him over to the Blues in a trade, and he really took off in St. Louis. And I'm excited. He's kind of my X factor for the season. He could really be a stud for them. They've still got Shen. They've still got Brandon Saad. Kasperi Kapanen is the other one. He was brought over from Pittsburgh. A little more of an assist guy. Third-line type player right now, but could move up. We'll see what Jake Neighbors does. They bring in Kevin Hayes. There was some talk of a big trade where they would get Hayes and a defenseman and maybe sell off Torrey Krug. The talk is that Krug denied waiving his no-trade clause. He wanted to stay put. I know a lot of fans are uppity about getting rid of some of these defensemen, but hear me out. This team is better if this defensive group stays healthy and gets things going. I'm giving them one more year. This is not like the Cardinals with the pitching, and I know that the Blues kind of sucking last year. They didn't even suck. They were just they weren't as good as we hoped. And once they hit the trade deadline, sold off, then they were bad. The Cardinals were bad, kind of bad from the start, and it just kept going downhill. And the frustration has snowballed. But this isn't like the Cardinals pitching where they didn't have a top guy. The Blues have Falk. Parayko can be that guy. Krug can be that guy. You've got a guy like Nick Leddy who's a veteran. If this group stays healthy and finds that step that they had lost last year, they're better with Torrey Krug than dumping him and eating salary and salary cap. So, yeah, they have some young players, but I'd rather keep them. So, this, my expectations for this season, I don't have any. I'm not going into this season with big expectations for the Blues. That's not to say I'm down on them. I'm excited to see what happens, what develops, what young players are there. If it doesn't work, they're going to change some things. It's a good evaluation year, and maybe, just maybe, they get some things together and figure it out. We're going to have Binnington and Joel Hofer in net. So the goalies are still there. They've got some really good pieces. Maybe they make a run, and maybe they add some pieces at the deadline. Or they add them in the offseason and come back really good next season. But it's kind of an evaluation year. See some young guys, see some of these new pieces, and see what happens. And that's the mentality for me. I just want to see what happens, and hopefully, just maybe, they're pretty darn good. Or at least they have some excitement to them. Now, as for the rest of the league, I don't really know who to predict. I haven't really gotten into my hockey talk yet. It's August. I don't really know who I'm looking at moving into next season for NHL Stanley Cup. I think Vegas is still pretty good. We saw Seattle take some real steps. That was impressive. Detroit added some pieces. I don't know if they're a playoff team yet or not. It'd be nice if they eventually were, but it's a frustrating time in St. Louis for sports because you had the Blues not do as well as you thought they would. And then, okay, at least it's the baseball season. Well, the Cardinals suck. They were really, really disappointing this year. Everyone knew the Blues might take a step back last year because they lost some pieces. But, not keeping David Perron. They had a team that could win the Stanley Cup in 2022, and then the 23 team just wasn't the same. So, kind of a little bit of a redo. It's almost like, you had the 19 team, the 20 team was really good, and then the 21 team, the half season with the lockout, not the lockout, but it was shortened because of the COVID season in 20 where they had to push the playoffs late. So it was like a half season. That team had some pieces added. That was different. That was a very veteran group that kind of, you could tell some pieces need to be changed. They changed them for the 21-22 season. That team was really good. Now last year, it was the remnant of that, just like the kind of the 21 season. Okay, what do we do here? Well, now we're trying to get younger this year. So there's a little bit of a gap here. It's not going to be a Stanley Cup contender unless, some more things than we expect go right. I'd like to see them sneak in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie at all. I want to see them win games. I watched the Cardinals with no expectations the rest of this season. I still want to see them win. But we'll see what happens. You never know. But I don't think the Blues are going to be a huge contender. I don't think they're better than Minnesota. I don't know what Winnipeg's going to be because they've been up and down. I don't know if Colorado's going to be better or not. Dallas, I never believe in Dallas, even though they went to the conference finals. They're very old, and at some point that'll run out. But I guess until it does, it hasn't. So, what do you want to talk about today, Aaron? Because we've covered some baseball. Good Lord, with the baseball, it's just got me wrecked because it's just, I'm hoping the Cubs make it. Unbelievably, me hoping the Cubs make it just so I can go to a postseason game, even though it's not going to be a team that I necessarily like. I'm not going to root for the Cubs. I told my wife, I'm not putting on a Cubs jersey. I'll wear my Cardinal stuff. I'll do it. But the Cardinals aren't good. The Red Sox are, if I had to predict, and I've been bad at this, I don't know if the Red Sox will jump over everyone else. And even if they do get in, what are they going to do in the postseason? I'm jumping on the Rangers and the Orioles, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, what do we like to talk about in August? Football. This is how good a baseball season it is. I'm looking at football season. I teased at the beginning of the show. I admitted to having followed the Chiefs for a couple of years, even though I wouldn't put them in the favorites category. Now with Tom Brady gone, what does the landscape look like for me? Still a Patriots fan, so I think the Patriots are going to be better than they've been. I think Mac Jones is going to take that next step. Why? Because Bill O'Brien is going to be the offensive coordinator. Bill O'Brien was Brady's offensive coordinator in between Josh McDaniels' stints. Brady and O'Brien got along pretty well. Brady talks about it in his show that he got along well with them. They were a little bit fiery, so you'd see them get into it with each other. But apparently they really like each other, and O'Brien's really good with the offense. He was always good in Houston with the offense. He's just bad as a general manager. I think this is going to fix a lot of things for New England. You had the Matt Patricia, Joe Judge duo, and Joe Judge was just a bad coach, in New York and in New England. And Matt Patricia, the defensive, in reverse. He's a defensive coach working offense. I thought it might work. Matt Patricia's weird for me because he was a great defensive coordinator and everyone respected him. And then when he got the Detroit job, it's almost like it flipped. Like he got arrogant about it. And he wasn't the guy last year. I think Bill O'Brien is perfect for this. He's worked with young guys. He's worked on offense. The Patriots added Mike Gesicki, a tight end. He's the one who came up with the Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez offense with 2 tight ends. I think this is going to be really, really good for Mac Jones' development. Or Mac Jones is a bust. We're going to find out real quick because the offensive coordinator. I don't think Bailey Zappi is going to be a stud long term. I might eat crow for that. But, we'll see. I think New England will be better. I'm excited for them. Like I said, Tampa, who I've been following the last few years and really pulling for because of Tom Brady, I always left a little bit of room for I may not care about Tampa after he's gone. And guess what? I don't. Some of it's their fault. I was interested to see who they'd bring in to replace Tom Brady. Spoiler alert, it's Baker Mayfield, who couldn't get it done in Cleveland. I don't care about Tampa anymore. I'm not saying that I'm not hoping they win. I'm not saying that I didn't like them. I'm like, I know people like, I was never a fan of them. I watched Tampa religiously for the last couple of years because of Tom Brady. And I always knew if he left, what would happen? I keep defending myself on this, and eventually it's just going to wash away. This is kind of my last say about my fanship for Tampa. I wish I'd spent less money on them with, hats and gear and stuff. I always kind of knew it was because of Brady. I like Mike Evans. I like Godwin. I like a lot of the members of the coaching staff, but my interest has not stayed without TB12. So where does that leave me? Well, I looked at Indy last year. I did buy an Indianapolis Colts hat on my way down to Tennessee a couple weeks ago. I still have some interest in hoping the Colts do well just because they're a regional team. That's kind of like me talking about the Rangers and the Orioles in terms of baseball. It's like, I'd like to see the Colts do well. They had Anthony Richardson, my co-host with, he's actually my host, and I'm a part-time co-host with now Peoria Sports Radio 1011, formerly ESPN. Mike Rizzo says he doesn't think that Richardson's maybe the answer, but, we'll see. New coach in Indianapolis, we'll see how they do. I wish them well is kind of how I would say it. I wouldn't call myself a Colts fan, but I hope they do well. But Kansas City, I'm all in. I'm jumping on Kansas City. I'm not saying they're jumping the Patriots as my favorite team. St. Louis has been following them. Now, here's the chronology. I really like Mahomes. I liked him even when he was playing against Brady's last couple of years of being a Patriot. I rooted for him in the Super Bowl, to get to the Super Bowl, the year they won, 54 against San Francisco. And the following year, COVID, 2020, I actually went to the mall to buy a Chiefs Super Bowl champions hat, thinking, you know what, I'm going to jump on this. St. Louis has jumped on this. They didn't have them. I guarantee you if they'd had those, my little football crisis wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have followed Tampa as close. I would have been following the Chiefs. But I watched the Chiefs kind of religiously. I followed them. I wanted to see what happened for a couple years. And then finally last year I just admitted, like, I've been watching Mahomes for a couple years now. I'm jumping in. You all can judge me as much as you want. This is where I'm at. But I've admitted myself, without Tom Brady in the league to distract me, and no, I wasn't going to become a fan of the Raiders or the Miami Dolphins if he had joined them. I really wasn't. I have no interest there. I really liked what they did in Tampa with that particular group. But Patriots and Chiefs, that's it. A little bit of interest in the Colts, but I'm hunkering down. I'm sticking to it. You can say I bounce around. My buddy Tim thinks I'm crazy because I don't know how you could have more than one team or jump around. Mike Rizzo was making fun of me. Like, weren't you on Tampa? Yeah, I know I was, but here I am. So, entering my first season with 1, no Tom Brady in the league, and 2, officially having a second favorite NFL team besides the Patriots, being the Kansas City Chiefs, not just I'm following Tampa for Brady. First season with that as a second team. Here we are. Let's do a little football preview. My draft is coming up in just a couple of days. Drafts, plural. I'd love to get Mahomes. I really would. But and yes, I do have a Mahomes jersey. I got one for the Super Bowl last year. I went all out. I'm all in. But let's go through the divisions. Let's see what I think of every single team in the NFL. There's been some change. It's been interesting to watch. There's a couple of teams that I'm hot and cold on. There's some that I feel really strong about. And starting in the AFC East, where I always start, Buffalo's going to win that division again. I know everyone thinks Miami can. By the way, asterisk this whole thing. I've been horrible about predictions. I'm probably dooming every team I talk about. Maybe, look at the baseball. Maybe I should just flip this entire sheet upside down and say, oh, the Washington Commanders are going to win the Super Bowl this year. So Buffalo's going to win the AFC East. I think they're still good. I know they've had trouble winning the last couple of years once they get to the playoffs, but getting there, they're good. Josh Allen's still good, unless he gets hurt. They still have a good roster. I'm going to put New England number 2, honestly. I haven't had this thought until just before I started this episode. New England's going to be number 2. The defense is still good. And if you think about if Bill O'Brien gets Mac Jones and the offense clicking, there's no reason this team can't be better. I don't think anyone's going to pick New England to be ahead of Miami but me. But I'm picking them. I think if Mac Jones takes that step, which it's about time he does, I'm still in on him, but this is it. If he doesn't take the step, if he's still okay, I'm out. I like him mentally, but he's got to show it to me physically. I think New England can be number 2 in this division. I don't think they're going to beat Buffalo to win the division. But they had Juju Smith-Schuster. They have, I know he's aging, but he's still good. They have Parker. They don't have Jacoby Myers anymore. But here's the thing. I've been saying for a couple of years now, New England needs to get some weapons. Why does Mac Jones have no weapons? They never get Mac Jones weapons. They didn't get Brady weapons. They've got Juju Smith-Schuster and Devontae Parker. I can't remember the name of the other receiver. Let me pull my phone up real quick. They had another guy who was kind of stepping into the limelight last year. Smith-Schuster, Parker. Kendrick Bourne was really good. That's who it was. They got 3 guys who I really like. Plus, you have those 2 tight ends. Hunter Henry, Gesicki, no more Jonnu Smith. If Gesicki is good, it says he's injured, but I think he's got a shoulder joint thing going on. He should be fine. If you add those receivers and those tight ends make a good receiving core, they've moved on from everyone but Ramondre Stevenson in the running game. They bring in Ezekiel Elliott. They've got Ty Montgomery. Elliott, I don't know what he's going to be. I know that's a big name signing. I don't know what he's going to be. Stevenson is an elite running back, and I think he's still going to be. But I think Elliott adds an extra wrinkle to this offense for them. So I'm not saying like, oh, I'm super excited to see what he can do. No, I think at this point, he starts off as a nice piece, and then he might be able to put himself into the discussion. So the Patriots have a really nice group. They've also got this Malik Cunningham who can throw and receive. Who knows what's going to happen with that. But I think the Patriots can get to number 2 in this division. Miami. It is hard picking New England over Miami. Tua Tagovailoa's health is the biggest problem for me. The biggest reason I want to pick Miami, I should have done this in a different fashion. I should have done why they can and why they can't. But I still believe in Tua. People are saying if you put Tua in New England and Mac in Miami, Mac would have been seen as the better guy because of all the weapons that are in Miami. You got Tyreek Hill. You still got Mostert as a running back. Jalen Waddle. But I think New England's defense, they like to say the defense wins championships thing. New England's defense is really good, and they're going to be really good. And then you add a real, I don't get excited about a coach offense often, but you're adding a really good offensive coordinator to a young quarterback who really needs it. Look at how he did with Josh McDaniels. You're going to add a different element altogether. You're getting all of Brady's coaches here, except for Charlie Weiss. So I think New England can make a run. I'm excited for them, more than I've been. But there's another team in this division and a bigger quarterback name that's dropped that a lot of people are thinking exciting things about. Aaron Rodgers is a Jet. And I still have them in last. I don't think the Jets are going to get out of their own way just yet. That's not to say that they can't. You could easily flip. I think you can shuffle the cards besides Buffalo. I think Buffalo wins the division. But I think you can shuffle the entire division. And it's going to be close. I think the Jets are going to get better. I think Rodgers is still good. I think the fresh start's going to be really nice for him. I think he and LaFleur got along well enough, but sometimes it's just easy. You look at Brady was refreshed to get away from Belichick, and they don't hate each other. They've talked about each other glowingly. But it was clear that Brady going somewhere where he had a little more control, a little less of the Belichick getting involved, it was just good for him. I think this will be good for Aaron Rodgers. I think he's going to have the last spurt. I don't think they're going to win this division this year. I don't think they're necessarily a playoff team. You could put them second, third, fourth, whatever. I have New England second because if you put the defense out there and then you have the offense complement it, I don't think Miami's any better. I do like Mike McDaniel's analytics-based. I hate analytics, but I think he's a sharp coach. He uses a lot of analytics, but I think he's smart enough to adjust in Miami. So I think Miami will still be good. But Buffalo, New England, Miami, Jets. For the record, I'm not going to predict playoff teams besides these division winners. Maybe I'll pick a couple that I think could be, but I'm not doing the whole, what I've been doing for the last year. Oh, this team's going to make the Super Bowl. I'm just going to give you the division ranks and then kind of go from there. Because I've just been so bad with predictions, and it's driving me nuts. I'm not really going to get into that. I'm just going to let her rip and, go from there. The AFC North might be the easiest one to predict. The Cincinnati Bengals are really good. Honestly, I almost like them to go to the Super Bowl over any other teams in the AFC. I just said I'm not going to make Super Bowl predictions, and here I am. I really like them. I think they're good. I still think they're good from last year. They were so close, neck and neck with the Chiefs, and we'll get to the Chiefs when we get to their division. Cincinnati, I love Joe Burrow. I like all of his weapons. They're serious. They're a good team. They're going to win that division. I think Baltimore gets better with Lamar Jackson back. I don't know if Odell Beckham makes a difference, but I think Lamar Jackson being back and healthy and happy with his contract puts Baltimore back in the fray. They're the number 2 team. They had a chance to win it last year. A lot of people forget we had the Damar Hamlin thing happen where, he collapsed on the field, essentially died and was resuscitated, and that game was called, and because of the uneven schedule, they almost went to win percentages, and Cincinnati might be able to play certain games at home, and this, that, and the other. Baltimore was involved in all that just because of who they were matched up against in the playoffs. So Baltimore had chances to do some damage, and I think they can this year. I don't think they win the division, but beware Baltimore. I never like to count Baltimore out, ever. I think I said on last year's prediction show that I don't like to count Baltimore out of the playoffs. And like I said, it's not a prediction. It's just they're going to finish second. This is the hard one I had. Pittsburgh and Cleveland. What is Deshaun Watson? That's going to show what Cleveland is. If Deshaun Watson can get back to form, Cleveland can finish third. I have Pittsburgh third. That just, put them both even. Kind of wash this last two on this division as a prediction. Is Kenny Pickett going to be better? I think Pittsburgh's like Baltimore for me. They're always kind of good at least. They're competitive. They're definitely not a playoff team to me, but I think they can sneak into third. If Kenny Pickett's better, they'll figure it out. They're well coached. Cleveland, I don't know what to think of them. My host from Cleveland, he doesn't like the coaching staff for Cleveland. He doesn't think they're going to be anything. I almost wrote Cleveland in third just because of the Deshaun Watson factor. They have a better proven quarterback than Pittsburgh does, but I think these two teams will be similar. For all we know, they're going to tie. So we'll see. I don't think they really factor in that much. I think Cleveland has a nice roster. I kind of like the names on Cleveland's roster better than Pittsburgh, but prove it. Show it to me. Show me that you're a real contender. I don't know. I think Rizzo would agree with me. He might have them last. I don't know. The South. Jacksonville had a fantastic game with the Los Angeles Chargers last year in the playoffs. Big comeback. I think they win this division. Tennessee, they need a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. All due respect to Ryan Tannehill. Love the guy. They need a younger, more exciting quarterback for that offense to go with Derrick Henry. I could see Tennessee winning that division, but I think Jacksonville wins it. I love Doug Peterson as a head coach for that team. I think Jacksonville wins. Tennessee's second. Indy's going to be third because they're going to play Richardson. He's going to prove to be decent, but not great just because he's so young and inexperienced. He'll get better. He's not good enough. He's just going to need to get the experience. Indy will be third. Houston's working on a lot of stuff. I think Houston's fourth. Pretty cut and dry there. The West. Kansas City does not have Tyreek Hill anymore. They don't have his replacement, Juju Smith-Schuster. They're relying on Kadarius Toney as their number one receiver. They do still have Isaiah Pacheco, the running back. They have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They have Jerick McKinnon, who's a passing down back. They've got, Travis Kelce, the current greatest tight end in the league. Kansas City's going to win this division. I think they're going to be fine. They may not be as flashy as they were. I think we're going to see more running game out of them, actually. Mahomes won't have to do it all because they'll have some running game. But I definitely think Kansas City still wins this division. They're still an AFC title game or bust type team for me. Are they better than Cincy this year? I don't know. You could see them back in. They've got Mahomes. They've got Andy Reid. This is like talking about Brady. You'll notice that the teams that I follow and the excitement that I like in football are like the best quarterback. Again, not to say that I'm going to switch teams when Mahomes is gone. I'm locked in, but I think having Andy Reid, having Mahomes, they don't have Eric Bieniemy, so we'll see what Matt Nagy back in Kansas City. He was back last year, but now as the offensive coordinator, I think Andy Reid's the one running that offense. So I think Kansas City will be fine. They may not be quite as flashy, but they'll be fine. They have one of the big defensive players holding out for a contract. That's going to be a problem defensively. But, I think Kansas City can still win it. Can they do it without the number one wide receiver? Can they do it with the tight end and, a cast of characters? Now, Kadarius Toney's an interesting one, because I was reading a fantasy football magazine on my way back from Tennessee. Wife was driving. And they're talking about how Kadarius Toney, for years, everyone has thought he's got the skill set, which my mother hates that phrase, skill set. He's got the skills that Antonio Brown does. Speed, catchability, height, but he hasn't stayed healthy. If he stays healthy, he could be a true number one receiver. I don't know that I buy that he's Antonio Brown 2.0. But if he stays healthy, he definitely can have an impact on this team. And again, Mahomes can make people just like Brady made people. Number 2, I have the Chargers. I have not given up on Justin Herbert. I know there's people who think he's either elite or not. I like the Chargers. I think that I still think they can challenge Kansas City, oddly enough. I almost put them over Kansas City last year, but I finally just stuck to my guns and said, and I'm going to say it again, Kansas City is Kansas City until they're not. No matter what pieces you take away. Last year it was Tyreek Hill. This year now it's Juju Smith-Schuster. KC is KC until they're not. Chargers are second. They can challenge with some of the offensive weapons they have, but I don't think they're better. Raiders, new year, new quarterback, no Derek Carr. They had Jimmy Garoppolo. Some people think he's garbage. Some people think he's untapped talent. He was good last year in San Francisco until he got hurt again. We'll get to the Raiders. The Raiders. This is the Raiders. The San Francisco 49ers later. I think the Raiders can compete. I don't think they are a big-time playoff contender. But we'll see what they can do. I think Josh McDaniels' tenure is going to be better than it was his previous head coaching jobs. And then Denver, they bring in Sean Payton. I don't know what Russell Wilson still has. I think they're going to look better than they did last year because they looked a mess. I still don't really like this team. I think some of them are old, some are inexperienced. I don't think they have enough. I could be dead wrong. They could make a push and flip with the Raiders. I do not think that either of the bottom two teams pass the top two teams. KC and Chargers, Raiders and Denver. Two separate classes. Who's my AFC championship? Cincy and Kansas City again. I don't think Buffalo makes it. I think there's going to be some frustration from Buffalo. Everyone kind of knows their game now. They're a really good regular season team. I don't see them pushing. They could push for the Super Bowl, but I just, they're behind the other two for me. NFC. Let's go back to the East. Philadelphia showed me a lot last year with, look at the quarterbacks they've had. They went through the Nick Foles, Carson Wentz era, and I still really like Carson Wentz, but clearly the injury has hurt him mentally and physically. Jalen Hurts was the right decision. He is an MVP candidate. If he stays healthy, we saw him and Mahomes, two of the more mobile quarterbacks. My wife put money on the octopus, him scoring a touchdown running and getting a 2-point conversion running or throwing in. Either way, he had a touchdown and a 2-point conversion in the same scoring drive. He's that good a player. Philly takes the division easily unless catastrophic injuries strike. Dallas is number 2 for me. I like to make fun of the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people do. But the reality is they still have some really good players. Dak Prescott is fine. If he weren't in Dallas, if you put Dak Prescott on Minnesota, no one would know the difference. And that's not a knock on Minnesota. It's just not a high-end media market. We'll get to them in Kirk Cousins. But I think Dak Prescott's, the high middle tier. Low. I did this on the radio. So last year my thing was the whole, you can win with a middle tier quarterback. And then what happened? The elite quarterbacks went to the Super Bowl. So I've walked that back. Elite quarterbacks, tier 1 quarterbacks, middle tier quarterbacks, low end quarterbacks. Dak Prescott is a tier 1 quarterback. He's not elite. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not what Aaron Rodgers used to be. Aaron Rodgers is a tier 1 quarterback, and he has a chance to get back to the elite. There's people who think he's still elite, and I don't think they're necessarily wrong. Dak Prescott's a tier 1. He's a starter, he's a star, he's a stud, and if he weren't in Dallas, there wouldn't be as much pressure on him. There's people who think he's better than Tony Romo was. I don't know about that. Tony Romo was a pretty good quarterback. Dak Prescott's fine. So we'll see what happens. I don't think they flip Philadelphia, though. At least they're letting go of the Ezekiel Elliott era. Giants are third. Brian Daboll did a really good job. I don't think that highly of Daniel Jones. They're trying to win with the middle-tier quarterback, but they have some nice pieces and a really good head coach. So, Giants are 3. They can mess some things up. Kind of like Detroit feels like they can. We'll get into them in a minute, too. Washington's kind of rebuilding some things. They hired Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator. It's really interesting to me. I can never get an answer that I accept. People say, Eric Bieniemy, it wasn't him. It was Andy Reid the whole time. After a couple years of Eric Bieniemy's the guy behind Mahomes. Turns out Mahomes is the guy behind Mahomes. According to the quarterback show, he really has a good relationship with his quarterback coach, Matt Nagy. Mahomes does. So we'll see how Nagy does as an OC. But Mike Rizzo, my host on PR Sports Radio 101, says he thinks Bieniemy is being held back by what Nagy did in Chicago poorly. The fact that somebody from the Andy Reid tree did not pan out, kind of like the Belichick guys don't always pan out. So maybe Bieniemy finally just got a raise. Maybe he thinks he can be the next head coach after Ron Rivera retires. I don't know. I don't think Washington has it yet to pass the New York Giants. I have not lived to see Washington be great. They had Carson Wentz last year, and they took the job away from him for Taylor Heineke. So we'll see what they do. But Philly wins that division. Honestly, I'd say Dallas is probably a playoff team. AFC, I didn't make my playoff predictions. Like I said, I have the 4 division winners. We'll circle back and maybe we'll look at that. Even though I said I'm not going to go like, oh, this team's going to the Super Bowl. Maybe I'll try and pick my other wild card teams. But Philly, and yeah, I like Dallas. The North. Now, I have a bet with Mike Rizzo. We both like Chinese, and we like a particular Chinese place, Chang's Walk-In. He thinks Detroit's winning this division. He thinks Detroit, with what they showed at the end of the year, and their coach, and I've been saying for a few years now, I like Jared Goff. He's not an elite quarterback. He is the middle-tier quarterback. He's the one that it's worked with. He's a good game-managing quarterback. He game-managed with Sean McVay's guidance to the Super Bowl. He lost to the Patriots, but, it was a good Patriots team. He thinks Detroit's going to win this division. I say Minnesota can still win this division, even though they fell apart at the end of last year. If I win, he's buying me lunch at Chang's. If he wins, I'm buying him lunch. And if the Bears or Green Bay win this division, we're just going to go to lunch, and we're going to get separate checks. So, I'm going to take Minnesota. I think Kirk Cousins is a Tier 1 quarterback. I don't think he's a middle tier. He's good. I like him. I like Justin Jefferson. They subtracted their running back, so that's going to be an interesting situation. No more Adam Thielen. But I think, Rizzo thinks that their coach is not, Kevin O'Connell is not going to be, the league's seen him. He feels the same about him as Miami. Like, the league's seen him. The book is out. There's going to be adjustments. I think Kevin O'Connell's a good coach. I think the offense there is really good. They need to do better on defense. But I think that's a very, very winnable division for them. I think Detroit steps it up and competes for the division. I think this is really, really close to the end. But I think Minnesota wins this division. Now, the Bears and Green Bay. The Bears are the X factor. And specifically, Justin Fields. If Justin Fields figures it out, back when Fields and Mac Jones were drafted, I kind of wanted the Patriots to get Fields because of his, the high ceiling, but he's got a low floor. They went with Mac Jones, high floor, low ceiling, supposedly. The more steady guy. Fields has a lot of skills and a lot of talent, and if he turns it on this year, maybe watch out for the Bears. Now they have some interesting pieces. They had the number 1 overall draft pick, and they traded it away and got other draft picks. They got DJ Moore as a receiver for Fields. So they have some pieces for Fields to throw to now. We'll see if they put it together. Some think the Bears are going to finish in last. I think Green Bay's going to be a little like the St. Louis Blues. They're retooling a little bit. We're going to see what Jordan Love is. He wasn't very good last year, but maybe he's good now that he's the starter. It's hard to predict where those two teams are going to fall. I think that's why it's making it so easy for people to pick Detroit. Because, okay, we know how Detroit played. We know how Minnesota played. We don't know what Jordan Love's going to do or Justin Fields this year. So I'm going to roll with that. Minnesota, Detroit. I have Chicago third, actually, and Green Bay last. I could be completely wrong about that. You could flip Chicago and Green Bay. You've noticed that a lot of these divisions I've had, I said you can shuffle the last 3 in the AFC East. You can shuffle Pittsburgh and Cleveland. You might be able to shuffle Indy and Houston, although I think Indy's better. You might be able to shuffle the Raiders and Denver, but I think the Raiders are better. I think Washington's last in the East, and now I'm saying you might be able to shuffle 2 or 3 of these teams in this division. I still think Minnesota and Detroit are better than the other two. In a year, I think that'll be different. But now the NFC South. So you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the last few years, and Tom Brady just running away with stuff. He's gone. Baker Mayfield's in. They're my last place team. That's how I feel about them. I think that they have a good roster. I think they could be better than Atlanta. They didn't really get better is my problem. So let's start from the top. New Orleans gets Derek Carr. They're the number 1 team for me. They showed me some signs of improvement last year during the season. No more Jameis Winston. Derek Carr, guy who's had some really nice times, a couple of nice seasons when healthy. But I think New Orleans takes the next step with a really nice quarterback. They have a chance to settle things down. New Orleans is the division winner. Carolina, who traded for the number 1 pick, is currently my number 2. They had some nice moments last year. I think Carolina can, if Bryce Young's really, really good, who they picked first overall at quarterback, they can take the next step. Atlanta has a young quarterback as well. They challenged for the division at one point last year against Tampa. That was a bad division. So this is a hard one to predict because I think New Orleans and then everyone else, you could say Tampa Bay number 2 just because they still have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But they didn't add anything. Everybody else added something. Tampa didn't. They downgraded a quarterback. No more Leonard Fournette, even though, Rachaad White was the running back for most of the year anyway for Tampa. I don't know. I don't feel it for Tampa. I don't think that they're the answer with Baker Mayfield. I could be completely wrong here. They're kind of a big X factor for me. This is my team I hem and haw on. I do this every prediction show where it's like, oh, who are you going to pick? Tampa's I could move them up. Usually I end up scratching somebody and moving them up. But, I like New Orleans. I like, if Bryce Young's good, I think Carolina can make some noise. I think Atlanta with a young quarterback could make some noise. They almost overtook Tampa for the division last year. And now Tampa doesn't have Tom Brady. So I got Tampa falling the last, but they could be number 2. I don't know. This is one of those. This is the middle tier quarterback question. Do you believe that Baker Mayfield, a middle tier to low tier quarterback, because he's shown flashes of being good in his early days in Cleveland, he's shown flashes of being decent, filling in for the Rams last year for a little bit, and he's also shown to be a disaster his time in Carolina. Tampa has the offensive talent with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Rachaad White to stay in it. But they also have a lot of inconsistencies. There's questions about coaching consistencies. They weren't great last year with Tom Brady. They barely were a playoff team. They were a division winner in a bad division. They're not a playoff team if they're not in that division. Sometimes you need that. I didn't think they were going to win the Super Bowl last year when they got to the playoffs. I thought going into the season they were a Super Bowl favorite because they had all these offensive weapons. But I just think Carolina can steal some games. Atlanta can steal some games. New Orleans looks like the most solid team to me. And Tampa's the one that I just don't know. Everybody else got better and they didn't. So right now we're going to New Orleans, Carolina, Atlanta, Tampa. But if Tampa figures it out, then they could bump themselves all the way up to number 2, I think. Like I said, Baker Mayfield is the X factor in that entire division. Tampa Bay has offensive pieces, but they didn't get themselves better. This is part of why they lost me. I mean, yeah, I follow them for Brady, but they didn't do anything to inspire you. But they still have Mike Evans. They still have Chris Godwin. So we'll see what happens. I also think with all the, stress I'm having over picking that division, that it's still New Orleans, who I like best, and I still don't think any of those teams are going to the Super Bowl. I still don't think any of those teams are going to be a wild card. So it might be meaningless. So I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to say New Orleans, and I'm going to, I have a couple of divisions like this. I told you the whole AFC East, this one, I have New Orleans and shuffle the rest of them. Heck, you could shuffle this whole division. So I've just been bad at predictions, and I think I'm in my own way. But my first instinct is New Orleans, Carolina if Bryce Young's good. Atlanta seems like the 3 because they almost made a run for it last year, and Tampa got worse. So I've got Tampa in last, but could bump up to number 2 if they find some magic. West, San Francisco is going to win that division because their defense was really good, and then their offense, if they can settle on a quarterback. This is the thing. They had the Brock Purdy thing at the end of the year. They had 3 quarterbacks last year and then a disaster in the NFC title game. Trey Lance is supposed to be their quarterback. Was. High draft pick. Traded up to get him. Hasn't really worked out. Got hurt last year. Jimmy Garoppolo comes back as the... they couldn't trade Jimmy Garoppolo. And he comes back to start after Trey Lance's injury. And then he gets hurt. And then Brock Purdy shows up. And he's good. And the magic never stopped. I don't know what to think of the Brock Purdy thing. Like, it feels like a flash in the pan and that they're relying on him to be good. Like, the Patriots had Mac Jones, then Bailey Zappi was good for a couple of games, and then that genie kind of fell out of the bottle. I don't really know if I believe in Brock Purdy. This is my biggest concern about San Francisco is what is Brock Purdy, and is he going to be healthy? He hurt himself in the NFC game, and they ended up on, he ended up having to come into the game and finish the game just handing the ball off the rest of the way because all their quarterbacks got hurt. He kind of got teams talking about having an emergency quarterback available so that if something were to happen, you'd have a guy who, like an emergency goalie, where somebody can come out of the stands and play quarterback. It was a disaster. They have Sam Darnold now as their number 2, and Trey Lance is on the trading block. They have decided they like Sam Darnold, who the Jets drafted originally, who went to Carolina last year and was booted from the job twice. They like him better than Trey Lance. Now, I disagree with this. I think you've got to have Trey Lance on that team as your number 2 quarterback, pushing. I don't know. But I think Brock Purdy's going to start the year as the number 1 if he's healthy. And they say that it's going to be Trey Lance is going to be the third guy, the odd man out, and that Darnold's going to be the number 2. So we'll see if that works. But I'd be keeping Trey Lance unless they really feel this strong about Brock Purdy that they're willing to bank everything on him, knowing that this is the kind of move that gets a coach fired if it doesn't work. They believe in Brock Purdy. Sam Darnold's a backup quarterback at this point. And maybe they really feel like Trey Lance can get them more than he can provide for them. So we'll see. If San Francisco, if things go to plan and they have a quarterback, they have some really nice offensive pieces and they have a good defense. So I really think they can still win this division, regardless of the quarterback situation. The Rams, I like enough to almost win this division. If Matt Stafford's healthy, I still like Sean McVay. They could win this division. But I think San Francisco has a little bit more if the quarterback situation works out the way they plan. Seattle's my 3. Geno Smith really impressed me last year. I used him a few times. But Arizona's dead last because you don't know when Kyler Murray's coming back. I just don't think there's enough time. They don't have DeAndre Hopkins. They're a little bit of a mess there. So I think San Francisco and the Rams, and then Seattle, and then Arizona. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it all kind of comes down to, what happens with San Francisco. What happens with Brock Purdy? If Brock Purdy's the guy, that division's all theirs. If they keep him and Darnold, and it turns out Trey Lance is pretty darn good, but they trade him, then that's a mistake. They've been trying to do this for a few years now. It's weird because they drafted Lance so high, but then they went back to Garoppolo. They went back. Now they're not going to Lance. So, we'll see what happens. The other thing that can shake up the entire NFL is that Jonathan Taylor has asked to be traded. Jim Irsay's ruffled a lot of feathers. They've had different coaches. Some people like Irsay, some don't. They went through all the quarterbacks last year. Jonathan Taylor, who was the number one fantasy pick a year ago, has asked for a trade. And depending on whether he stays or goes, that's going to shake things up. It might drop Indy below Houston. It might send somebody else over the top. San Francisco has Christian McCaffrey now. That puts them over the top for me as a big-time contender. I still think they're a big-time contender. I like Minnesota. I like Philadelphia. I like San Francisco. And I like New Orleans. They all... But oddly enough, San Francisco's the only one with the quarterback controversy. I guess it's not controversy. People like Brock Purdy, I guess. It just... I don't know. It feels like... I'm not going to say I don't believe in the guy. He was good last year. But it kind of reminds me of the Nick Foles thing a few years ago in Philly, where Foles came out and just stunned everyone, and then all of a sudden, he wasn't the same ever again. I know Purdy's young, so we'll see. Let me open the old phone and let's see what Brock Purdy says here. That says on some of Brock Purdy's numbers and how hurt he is still. Yeah, they've still got Brandon Allen listed there. Brock Purdy his rookie contract. He was good last year. They're all going to play in the game coming up this week, so he's healthy. He's ready to go. I just want to make sure I had my information right. And then I've been looking at CBS on their predictions. Let's see what they have to say about the 49ers. Everything depends on Trey Lance's skill set and or Brock Purdy's injury. Wild to think about Lance and San Francisco expectations this time of year, this time last year versus now. They think they can go 12-5. So that, they have a really good team. If Brock Purdy's what everyone thinks he is, and they really get rid of Trey Lance, I would be holding on to Trey Lance for another year, but or at least for the first couple of weeks, and then move him. But this is what they think they can do. So, not to get buried with San Francisco, but so AFC East, Buffalo, AFC North, Cincinnati, AFC South, Jacksonville, AFC West, Kansas City. I like the Chargers, Baltimore, and whoever is the second team from the East. So currently I have New England, but if it's Miami or the Jets, that's my third wild card, because we do 3 wild cards now. So Chargers, Baltimore, and New England, Miami, or the Jets, depending on who plays the best. Those are my AFC playoff teams. I like Cincinnati and Kansas City to get to the championship game. I don't know who I like best for the Super Bowl. NFC, Philly, Minnesota, New Orleans, San Francisco. I like Dallas, the Rams, and I want to say Detroit or Seattle, but I just don't know. I don't feel strong enough to call one of those. Philly, Minnesota, New Orleans, San Francisco, Dallas, and the Rams. Those are my playoff teams. I guess the Giants were a playoff team last year, so I could say the Giants. They'd probably be a safe pick. But that's where I'm at in the NFL. I like Philadelphia and San Francisco to go back. So I'm essentially picking last year's AFC games. This is why I think predictions are garbage, because it's like, oh, it's the guys from last year. Minnesota, I'd really like to see them get to the NFC title game. I like Kirk Cousins. I've always liked him. I think he gets a bad rap for people think he's elite, and he's not. He's a really good tier 1, number 1 quality starting quarterback, but he's never going to be the elite guy. I think his team around him needs to be built so that he can play at his best. He's not Tom Brady. He's not what Aaron Rodgers was. He's a really good player, though, and a good human, as we saw from the quarterback show. So, there you have it. There's my... who do you like in the Super Bowl? Kansas City and Philly. Those are the teams that I like the best. So, go Chiefs. Go Patriots. I hope your team has a good year. I think Justin Fields is gonna ball. I think he's gonna be pretty good this year. Actually, I don't know if the Bears will be good enough, but let's see. What else have we missed in this several months? The All-Star Game was in Seattle for MLB. It's going to be in Texas next year. Shohei Ohtani has blown his arm out again. So the super contract may or may not be, what it once was. I just hope everyone's had a fun summer. It's been weird for me. I've been traveling a lot. Went down to Myrtle Beach, went to Texas, just got back from Tennessee, saw some concerts. But it's just different without the Cardinals being as good. It just is. This is my favorite time of year, and I had a great 4th of July, but the Cardinals being bad has just dampened the summer. Hopefully they're better next year. They don't need a lot to be a lot better. They need some pitching. So, sorry it took me so long to get this episode off the ground. I hope you all have great fantasy football drafts. I'm not going to give you any insight except this. If you do the running back zero strategy, which is you don't take a running back for like the first so many number of picks, just Google it. It'll tell you right away how many picks it is. It's you bulk up on receivers, tight end, and a good quarterback, and then you get your running backs. And the running backs are the interchangeable pieces all year. You kind of stream running backs. If someone does running back zero, tell me. I want to know how it works for you. What kind of team you end up with. You can direct message me, Facebook, whatever. Comment your fantasy football team. I haven't done my drafts yet, and I'm very curious to see how the running back zero strategy would work. I'm tempted to do one, but enjoy the rest of the baseball season, whether your team's in it or not. Baseball is great. Do immaculate grids. Enjoy the start of the football season. Hoping to be back in September. I've been busy, so I can't promise, but I promise you it's not going to be as long a layoff. We'll do some sort of October baseball special for postseason. This has been StraussNet Sports Radio, and as always, thank you for listening.
Send in my